There may be many matches with appeal on any given WWE pay-per-view card, but typically the main event, as in the match that actually goes on last, should be the big draw. Main eventers are expected to deliver and produce the highlight of the night, something they very often do. But not always do they truly get the credit for it, as with so many pay-per-views taking place throughout the years, the odd match gets forgotten about despite its superior quality. You can thank me for my elephantine memory for reminding you of this neglected greatness then. Speaking of elephantine, I also have a massive trunk. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 forgotten classic WWE pay-per-view main events. Join us. Number 10, The Undertaker vs. Shawn Michaels at In Your House Ground Zero. The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels have been involved in countless classic pay-per-view main events, including a few against each other. Their battles at 1997's Bad Blood and 2010's WrestleMania 26 are legendary, but the two put on another banger that few people remember a month before they had the first ever Hell in a Cell match. The dead man was a trifle miffed at the Heartbreak Kid after special guest referee Michaels had accidentally caved his head in with a chair and cost him the WWE title against Bret Hart at that year's SummerSlam. They met at Ground Zero, with Taker wasting no time in beating Shawn from pillar to post even before the bell officially rang. When they got back in the ring, it was more of the same, as Michaels clung on and endured the thumping until he saw an opening. The referee got bumped as Shawn's DX cohorts made their way to ringside, but the Phenom would not go down without a fight. Eventually, it all broke down thanks to the interference and referee shenanigans, resulting in a no contest. But what an image to end on, with Taker flying over the top rope onto a sea of bodies as HBK beat a hasty retreat. Number 9, John Cena and Shawn Michaels vs. Batista and The Undertaker at No Way Out 2007. Fast forward 10 years and Michaels and Undertaker were back at it, battling it out as the last two in the 2007 Royal Rumble, and then finding themselves on opposite sides of the blockbuster tag team main event of No Way Out 2007. The last major stop on the road to WrestleMania, the tag match sought to add intrigue to the two big matches not featuring Donald Trump set for the showcase of the Immortals, as World Heavyweight Champion Batista teamed with Mania opponent Taker and WWE Champion John Cena teamed with his future challenger Shawn Michaels. It was easily the best and most compelling match on what had been a rather dull pay-per-view, as all four men did their thing and teased dissension. Really, it was only a matter of time before someone got double-crossed, and on this occasion, it was the dead man, who tasted a spinebuster from the animal before Sweet Chin Music and the FU finally put him down. Come on, it's four absolute legends doing what they do best for close to 25 minutes. You know you want this. Stop lying to yourself. Number 8, Bret Hart vs. the British Bulldog at In Your House Seasons Beatings. At SummerSlam 1992, Bret Hart and the British Bulldog had an Intercontinental title match for the ages in front of 82,000 people at Wembley Stadium. It's viewed by many as the peak of Davey Boy's career and a shining example of the Hitman's ring generalship. Over 3 years later, the two would meet in another pay-per-view main event, this time with Bret's WWE title on the line, in a match that was just as compelling in its own way, but due to the circumstances, doesn't nearly get anywhere the amount of love. Headlining that December's In Your House Seasons Beatings, Bulldog was the heel on this occasion and was on the defensive for much of the contest. His position looked especially perilous after colliding with the ring steps and getting busted wide open, something that wasn't really seen back in those days since WWE had a ban on wrestlers blading. Hart, in order to add more drama to his title defense, did it on the sly, the cheeky devil, and got away with it too. And despite springing a gusher, he came out on the winning end after rolling up his brother-in-law. Number 7, Randy Orton vs. Ric Flair at Taboo Tuesday 2004. Randy Orton's ill-fated babyface turn in the fall of 2004 died a horrible death. After becoming the youngest world champion in WWE history, he promptly lost the title to Triple H in his first major defense, as he quickly proved that he was better suited to being a bad guy. The one major highlight of this first babyface Orton run was probably the Legend Killers cage match with former Evolution stablemate Ric Flair. Closing the novel Taboo Tuesday pay-per-view, fans voted for the two to collide inside the steel structure above False Count Anywhere or Submission. It wasn't an epic or anything, going just a shade over 10 minutes, but it was all action and suitably hate-filled for the storyline and stipulation. Both men got colour and did mean things to each other's bollocks, with the veteran putting in a performance that had me feeling like it was 1989 all over again for a second. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was only 1 at the time, but I still knew Flair was the best. The Nature Boy tried to use brass knuckles to no avail, and while trying to take Orton's head off with a chair, succumbed to an RKO. And then they shook hands after, because that's what real men do after trying to destroy others' special parts. Number 6, Camp Cornette versus the People's Posse at In Your House International Incident. There aren't many occasions when adding Psycho Sid to something, I mean anything, could be considered an upgrade. But watching the main event of In Your House International Incident, you get the sense that his inclusion in it made things so much better than was originally planned. The Ultimate Warrior was supposed to team with Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson to take on the Camp Cornette trio of Vader, British Bulldog and Owen Hart, before Jim Hellwig took off and Vince called in the master and ruler of the world to join the People's Posse. Naturally, the Heartbreak Kids stole the show here with a customarily breathtaking performance, one of many from 1996. But everyone else pulled their weight too, bringing their A-game for a very hot Canadian crowd. Even Sid, a man notorious for caring more about softball than grappling, was feeling it on the night. Any combination of talent squaring off here was, at the very least, good, and they teased the forthcoming Michaels-Vader showdown brilliantly, the Mastodon pinning the sexy boy. Just like in nature. Number 5, John Cena versus Bobby Lashley at the Great American Bash 2007. It's fair to say WWE weren't having a great time of it in the summer of 07, with real-life tragedy and scandal engulfing the company. It was in this period that they presented the Great American Bash, a show with a rare all-babyface main event. In it, John Cena defended the WWE title against Bobby Lashley. The Dominator had been having a great year, being ECW champion and getting to shave Vince McMahon's head. Cena, meanwhile, was really starting to establish himself as the guy and had improved his in-ring reputation thanks to some great matches with the likes of Shawn Michaels and the great Khali. Alright, one of those is true. Love you, Khali. Both men's hot streaks continued here as they had a belter that exceeded most people's expectations. The two powerhouses displayed enviable chemistry together and drew the fans with a simple story told well. The result was genuinely in question too, since Vince was clearly high on Lashley and Cena had held the belt for close to a year at that point. However, Big Jort John pulled it out of the bag with a top rope FU in a one-off match that could have used a sequel. Number 4, The Rock versus Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker at Vengeance 2002. WWE had an embarrassment of riches as far as top-tier talent was concerned in 2002. The draft split may have halved the crews and in theory limited options when it came to main event programs, but as you can see here, the SmackDown lot had no issues putting on a WrestleMania-worthy headliner for what was really a B pay-per-view. At Vengeance, which took place in between the much more important King of the Ring and SummerSlam, The Undertaker defended his undisputed title against The Rock and Kurt Angle. It was brilliant. Triple threats are hard to do and do well, as it always seems like they devolve into a series of self-contained singles matches, but the three legends had no issues here. It was paced brilliantly, told a great story, and featured no shortage of exciting action. Particularly, that is, towards the end of the contest, when the finishers started flying and it really did become a tough one to call. After a barrage of rock bottoms, choke slams, angle slams, and so on, the Great One emerged with the gold and a date with Brock Lesnar. Ooh, no wonder he left for Tinseltown. Number 3, the Six-Pack Challenge at Unforgiven 1999. When a title is declared vacant, there are many ways to crown a new champion. You can put it on the line in a tournament, that's a good one, or have it decided in a battle royal, maybe not so good, but still plenty exciting. Or you can take 6 of your biggest stars and put them in the same pay-per-view main event. That'll do it. Closing out Unforgiven 1999 was a 6-pack challenge for the WWE title, as Triple H, The Rock, Kane, Big Show, Mankind, and the British Bulldog, subbing in for an injured Undertaker, duked it out with Stone Cold Steve Austin on hand as special outside enforcer. One of the better matches of the year, this was wild and had non-stop action. There were also several interesting story threads running throughout and intersecting at once. Speaking of threads, the major talking point was of course Davey Boy wearing tights instead of jeans. That's when you know it's a really big match, folks. After 20 rip-roaring minutes, the Texas Rattlesnake got involved by smacking Bulldog with a chair and counting the 3 to allow the game to become WWE champion for a second time. Number 2, Eddie Guerrero versus The Undertaker versus JBL versus Booker T at Armageddon 2004. After winning the WWE title in controversial fashion, JBL retained it against Eddie Guerrero, The Undertaker, and then Booker T, often by the skin of his teeth or thanks to outside forces. At Armageddon 2004, SmackDown general manager Teddy Long left the tall Texan with no place to hide by booking him in a four-way match opposite the three men he had routinely screwed over. Not only that, but if JBL's cabinet interfered, he would be stripped of the title regardless. All alone and outnumbered 3-1, the champ took his lumps before the others decided to fight amongst themselves too. And what a treat it truly was, especially to see a rare meeting between The Undertaker and Eddie Guerrero, two men who sadly never had a televised singles match against one another. Things really ramped up as the bout wore on, with both announce tables getting wrecked and a ladder proving handy for Latino heat. It looked as cert that a new champion was going to be crowned when that big fat idiot Heidenreich ran in, took out Taker, and allowed JBL to once again escape with the title. Number 1. Batista vs. The Undertaker at Cyber Sunday 2007. After being slotted into the middle of the card at WrestleMania 23 and given semi-main event status at the following month's Backlash, The Undertaker and Batista finally got a chance to headline at Cyber Sunday 2007. Once more, the World Heavyweight title was on the line, and what's more, Steve Austin was voted as the special guest ref. In the same vein as their previous matches against one another, this was a case of two warhorses throwing bombs and hoping that they had enough in the tank to weather the reciprocal onslaught. People are quick to lavish praise on Mean Mark for being a great worker, but some tend to forget that Big Dave got really good around this time, and his improvement was on full display here. There were big spine busters, power bombs, slams, and bone-rattling strikes, but nothing was quite big enough until Batista hit a pair of Batista bombs to put his opponent down for good. That is about as clean as The Undertaker ever really lost, but there was no shame in laying down after such a great performance against a worthy adversary. Oh, and one more thing, the two actually followed this encounter up just weeks later inside Hell in a Cell in another somewhat forgotten pay-per-view main event well worth checking out. You're welcome.